What if the single mother struggling to pay rent while serving drinks to billionaires discovers that her poverty isn't fate, but the result of a conspiracy designed to keep her from claiming a fortune that rightfully belongs to her bloodline? For Amanda Brooks, a 29-year-old cocktail server at Miami's most exclusive yacht club, that earth-shattering realization came disguised as an ordinary Saturday shift serving champagne to real estate moguls. For Katherine Montenegro, the hotel empire matriarch, whose luxury resorts dotted coastlines from Malibu to Monaco, it was the moment her carefully constructed world began to collapse. She was just trying to earn enough tips to keep her 8-year-old daughter in decent schools. She was just another wealthy patron enjoying the Harbor Club's pristine waterfront views and discreet service. But when Amanda noticed the distinctive sapphire ring on Katherine's finger, identical to the one her dying mother clutched in her hospital bed, a single observation would detonate a secret that had been buried for 28 years. This isn't a story about lucky coincidences. This is about how one woman's relentless pursuit of truth exposed a betrayal so calculated, so ruthlessly executed, that it had condemned an entire generation to poverty, while their stolen inheritance built a hospitality empire. But one Saturday afternoon, a single sapphire ring would change everything. The Harbor Club commanded the most prestigious stretch of Miami's Biscayne Bay, its white marble terraces and infinity pools creating an oasis where America's elite escaped the scrutiny of the outside world. Palm trees imported from Madagascar swayed in the ocean breeze, while yacht slips accommodated floating palaces worth more than most small towns' annual budgets. Amanda Brooks had been serving cocktails on the Harbor Club's main deck for 2 years, invisible to the titans of industry who gathered there to discuss acquisitions measured in billions while sipping drinks that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. At 29, she had perfected the art of elegant servitude, white designer uniform pressed to perfection, dark hair swept into a flawless updo, movements graceful and silent as she navigated between lounge chairs where world-shaping decisions were made between courses of beluga caviar. The work paid better than anything else available to a single mother without a college degree, but it came at the cost of daily humiliation. Every shift reminded her of the vast gulf between her cramped Hialeah apartment and the oceanfront mansions her clients owned as weekend retreats. She endured it because her daughter Emma needed stability, good schools, and a future that didn't involve serving drinks to people who owned private islands. Emma was 8 now, brilliant and curious, asking questions about why they couldn't afford the things her classmates took for granted. Amanda had no answers except to work harder, smile brighter, and hope that somehow she could save enough to give Emma the opportunities she'd never had. Every dollar went toward rent, Emma's Catholic school tuition, and the crushing medical debt left by her mother's final battle with cancer. Rosa Brooks had died 6 months ago, taking with her the few stories she'd ever shared about their family's past. Amanda knew almost nothing about her grandparents or great-grandparents. Rosa had always claimed the memories were too painful, that some stories were better left buried. The only family heirloom Rosa had possessed was a sapphire ring that she'd worn every day. A stunning piece, with a center stone the color of midnight oceans surrounded by tiny diamonds that caught light like captured stars. "It's all we have left of the good times, Mija," Rosa would whisper during her final weeks, her fingers too swollen from chemo to wear the ring anymore. Before everything went wrong, before we lost what should have been ours, Amanda had never understood what her mother meant. The Brooks family had always been working class. Rosa had cleaned offices downtown. Amanda's father had been a mechanic who died in a workplace accident when Emma was 2. There had never been good times or anything to lose. Now the ring sat in Amanda's jewelry box, too precious to wear but too meaningful to sell, even when the medical bills made her consider pawning it. Sometimes she'd hold it up to the light, wondering about the woman who'd first worn it, trying to imagine what prosperity her mother remembered through the haze of illness and medication. Today, the Harbor Club buzzed with its usual collection of Miami's power elite. Amanda recognized most of the regular members: the pharmaceutical heiress who owned half of South Beach, the tech mogul whose data centers powered the internet, the hotel baroness whose luxury resorts defined elegant travel worldwide. Katherine Montenegro commanded attention without seeking it. At 55, she possessed the kind of timeless beauty that suggested generations of careful breeding, her silver hair styled in soft waves that framed a face that belonged in art museums. Her cream-colored Valentino dress was cut with architectural precision, and she wore her vast wealth like a second skin, natural and unquestioned. As founder and CEO of Montenegro Hospitality Group, she controlled a luxury hotel empire that stretched across 6 continents. Amanda had served Katherine dozens of times over the past 2 years. She always sat in the same spot, the corner table overlooking the yacht basin, and ordered the same drink, Krug champagne, no garnish, chilled to exactly 40 degrees. She conducted business through lunch, her phone constantly buzzing with updates from properties in Dubai, Tokyo, and St. Moritz. She tipped exactly 30% and had never spoken a word that wasn't directly related to her order. This afternoon felt different, though Amanda couldn't identify why. Perhaps it was the way Katherine kept glancing towards shore with what looked like genuine melancholy, or the fact that she'd ordered a second glass of champagne, a deviation from her usual single-drink routine that seemed almost rebellious. As Amanda approached with the refill, something caught the Miami sunlight on Katherine's left hand. A sapphire ring glinted from her ring finger, and Amanda's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just similar to her mother's, it was absolutely impossibly identical. The same platinum setting, the same midnight blue center stone, the same circle of diamonds arranged like a constellation. But what truly stopped Amanda cold was a tiny flaw she'd memorized from countless examinations of her mother's ring. A microscopic inclusion in the sapphire that created a star-like reflection when light hit it at a specific angle. Katherine's ring had the exact same flaw. "Your champagne, Mrs. Montenegro," Amanda managed, her voice steady despite her thundering pulse. Katherine looked up from her phone, mild irritation crossing her features at being interrupted during what appeared to be an important call. "Thank you," she said dismissively, already turning back to her conversation. The words escaped before common sense could intervene. "I'm sorry to interrupt, ma'am, but that's a beautiful ring. My mother had one exactly like it." Katherine Montenegro froze mid-sentence, her phone forgotten, as her pale green eyes focused on Amanda with sudden, uncomfortable intensity. The transformation was startling, from bored aristocrat to someone who looked like she'd just seen a ghost. "Excuse me?" Her voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. Amanda's heart hammered against her ribs, but she was committed now. "The sapphire ring. It's identical to one my mother wore every day. Even the little star pattern in the stone when light hits it." The phone slipped from Katherine's manicured fingers, clattering onto the marble table. Her face had gone white as bone, the carefully maintained composure of a lifetime beginning to crack like ice under pressure. "That's impossible," she said, her cultured voice shaking. "This ring has been in my family for 4 generations. It's completely unique." Amanda felt the eyes of other club members turning toward their table, drawn by the suddenly tense atmosphere. "But, Mom, I held my mother's ring thousands of times. She wore it every single day until she got too sick to," her voice caught, "until the cancer made her fingers swell." Katherine stood abruptly, her tall frame casting a shadow over the small table. She pulled a $500 bill from her purse and dropped it beside her barely touched champagne. More than Amanda made in an entire week. "What was your mother's name?" The question came out sharp as broken glass. "Rosa Brooks. Rosa Eleanor Brooks." The name hit Katherine like a physical blow. She gripped the back of her chair for support, her knuckles white with strain. "We need to talk," she said, her voice hollow with some emotion Amanda couldn't identify. "Not here, tomorrow, 3 o'clock. She paused, studying Amanda's face with the intensity of someone memorizing evidence. Montenegro Plaza Hotel Penthouse Suite. Ask for me at the front desk." She walked away without another word, leaving Amanda standing beside the abandoned champagne, her world spinning on its axis. Around her, the Harbour Club continued its elegant dance of wealth and privilege, but she felt as if she'd just witnessed the first crack in a dam that was about to burst. The bus ride home to Hialeah felt surreal. Amanda sat in the crowded vehicle, surrounded by working families, returning from weekend jobs, trying to process what had just occurred. A hotel heiress, one of the most powerful women in the hospitality industry, had reacted to her mother's ring as if it contained the key to her own destruction. Her apartment felt even smaller than usual after the Harbour Club's opulence. Amanda made Emma dinner, mac and cheese again, because it was what they could afford, while her daughter chattered about her weekend art project. Emma had inherited Rosa's artistic talent, spending hours creating elaborate drawings that showed a sophistication beyond her years. "Mommy, why do you look sad?" Emma asked, looking up from her sketch pad with concern in her dark eyes. "Just tired, baby," Amanda said, forcing a smile. "Long day at work." But she wasn't tired, she was terrified. Something had shifted today. Something that connected their small, struggling life to the vast wealth of Katherine Montenegro. And if there was one thing Amanda had learned from watching the Harbour Club's elite, it was that people with that kind of power didn't reveal weakness accidentally. After Emma went to bed, Amanda pulled out her laptop and spent the night researching everything she could find about the Montenegro family empire. What she discovered painted a picture of wealth and influence that stretched back to the early 20th century. The company had been founded in 1923 by Carlos Montenegro, a Spanish immigrant who'd built his first hotel in Key West with money earned in the Cuban sugar trade. His son Miguel had expanded the business throughout Florida during the post-war boom, while Miguel's son Rafael had made Montenegro Hotels an international luxury brand. Katherine was the fourth generation to control the empire, the first woman to hold the CEO position. But as Amanda dug deeper into genealogical records and historical newspapers, she found inconsistencies that seemed deliberately obscured, references to business partnerships that appeared once and were never mentioned again, family members who showed up in early records but vanished from later accounts. It was as if entire chapters of the Montenegro story had been carefully edited out of existence. Most intriguingly, she found a brief mention in a 1962 Miami Herald business section about the resolution of the Brooks-Montenegro partnership dispute. The article was fragmentary, but it suggested that there had once been some kind of legal conflict between the families that had been settled privately to the satisfaction of all parties. But by the 1970s, all references to any Brooks connection had disappeared from the company's official history. It was as if a partnership or relationship had been systematically erased from public record. The next afternoon, Amanda stood before Montenegro Plaza Hotel, a gleaming 30-story tower that dominated Miami Beach's skyline. The building was a monument to luxury hospitality, its lobby adorned with original murals celebrating the golden age of Florida tourism. She'd driven past it countless times, never imagining she'd have reason to enter its marble-floored halls. The concierge treated her with the kind of professional courtesy reserved for people who mattered, escorting her to a private elevator that ascended directly to the penthouse. The ride seemed to last forever, carrying her up through layers of wealth and influence she'd never imagined she'd experience firsthand. The penthouse was a shrine to elegant living, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the Atlantic Ocean. Original artwork hung alongside historical photographs showing the construction of Miami's greatest hotels, while tropical gardens created private oases throughout the sprawling space. Katherine's home office occupied the entire East Wing, its walls lined with awards, honorary degrees, and photographs of her meeting with celebrities and world leaders. Behind a desk that looked like it belonged in a palace, Katherine waited. But she wasn't alone. An elderly man in his 80s sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk, his thick white hair perfectly groomed despite his obvious frailty. His pale green eyes, identical to Catherine's, studied Amanda with uncomfortable intensity, as if trying to solve a puzzle that had haunted him for decades. "Amanda Brooks," Katherine said as she entered, her voice carefully controlled. "This is my father, Raphael Montenegro. He's eager to meet you." Raphael struggled to rise with the careful movements of someone fighting age and illness. "Miss Brooks," he said, extending a hand that trembled slightly. "You have your grandmother's eyes." The casual familiarity sent ice through Amanda's veins. "You knew my grandmother?" "I knew Elena very well," he replied, his voice heavy with decades of buried emotion. "We were business partners many years ago." Amanda frowned. "Elena? My grandmother's name was Rosa Elena. She went by Rosa. Elena Rodriguez before she married," Raphael said gently. "Before she became Elena Brooks and tried to disappear from our world." Katherine moved to the windows, her posture rigid with tension. "Raphael, perhaps you should explain the situation." The old man settled back into his chair, his gaze distant with painful memories. "Your grandmother Elena worked for our family in the 1960s, managing the financial operations of our Miami properties. She was brilliant, ambitious, beautiful, everything a young man could admire. The pieces began falling into place with terrifying clarity. You had a relationship with her." Raphael flinched at the direct words. "It was more than a relationship. I was going to marry her, Amanda. I was 28. Heir to a growing hotel empire, and she was 25, the daughter of Cuban refugees who'd lost everything to Castro's revolution." "What happened?" Katherine turned from the windows, her face a mask of controlled pain. "My grandmother, Raphael's mother, discovered their engagement. She was horrified that her son planned to marry someone she considered beneath our family's social status." Raphael's voice grew heavy with decades of guilt. "Mother gave Elena an ultimatum. Leave Miami immediately, break all contact with our family, and accept a settlement that would ensure her silence, or face public humiliation that would destroy her reputation and any chance of future success in the hospitality industry." "How much?" Amanda asked, though she dreaded the answer. $100,000, Raphael admitted. "A fortune in 1965, but nothing compared to what she was giving up." Amanda's mind reeled. What was she giving up? The silence that followed was deafening. Raphael looked at Katherine, some unspoken communication passing between them. "Tell her," Katherine said finally. "She has the right to know." Raphael reached into his jacket and withdrew a small velvet box. Inside, nestled on faded silk, lay a diamond engagement ring that blazed like captured fire in the afternoon sunlight. "I bought this for her," he said, his voice breaking. "We were planning to announce our engagement at the company Christmas party. Elena was going to become not just my wife, but my full business partner." Amanda stared at the ring, understanding flooding through her like ice water. "She was pregnant." Raphael nodded, tears visible in his green eyes. "With your mother." "Rosa Elena Brooks was my daughter, Amanda." "Which makes you my granddaughter." The room tilted around her. Everything she'd believed about her family, her heritage, her place in the world, all of it crumbled in an instant. She wasn't just a struggling single mother serving drinks to the wealthy. She was one of them, born to wealth but denied it through circumstances beyond her control. "The ring," she whispered. "Was my engagement gift to her," Raphael confirmed. "I had it specially made by Cartier, using sapphires from a mine my grandfather owned in Burma. When Mother forced Elena to leave, she kept the ring as the only proof of what we'd shared." Katherine sat down heavily, her usual commanding presence completely shattered. "Which means the company should rightfully be shared with your branch of the family. The inheritance your mother never knew about, the legacy that was stolen from her." "Stolen?" Amanda's voice rose dangerously. Raphael hung his head in shame. "When Elena left, I tried to find her. But Mother had her relocated under a new identity, her past carefully erased. By the time I located her 15 years later, she'd built a new life as Rosa Brooks. I thought. I thought she was better off without the complications of our world. You thought wrong, Amanda said, her voice steady despite the fury building in her chest. She spent her entire life cleaning other people's offices. My mother grew up believing she was the daughter of refugees with nothing, never knowing she was heir to a hotel empire. She died drowning in medical debt while her birthright sat in trust funds she never knew existed. I sent help, Raphael protested weakly. Anonymous scholarships, medical bills mysteriously paid, job opportunities that seemed to appear from nowhere. Charity, Amanda cut him off. You sent charity to your own daughter and granddaughter because you were too cowardly to claim us publicly. Katherine stood, moving to a wall safe hidden behind a painting of the original Montenegro hotel. She withdrew several thick folders, spreading their contents across her desk. There's more, Amanda. Things you need to understand about what our family has done to yours. The documents told a story of systematic deception that spanned decades. Legal papers showed that Raphael had indeed established trust funds for Elena and her descendants, but they'd been structured so that the beneficiaries would never be notified of their existence. Financial records revealed millions of dollars sitting untouched in accounts while Rosa struggled to pay rent. Most damning of all was a series of private investigator reports, commissioned by Raphael's mother between 1965 and 1985, detailing every aspect of Elena's life after she'd been forced to leave Miami. The surveillance had been comprehensive: where she worked, where she lived, who she married, even which schools her daughter attended. She tried to contact you, Amanda said, her voice hollow with grief as she read Eleanor's intercepted letters. Multiple times over the years. She tried to tell you about Rosa, about wanting her daughter to know her father's family. Raphael nodded miserably. Mother made sure I never received a single letter. She hired people to monitor Elena's communications, to ensure that any attempt to reconnect would be intercepted and destroyed. My mother died believing her father abandoned them, Amanda continued, reading through the surveillance reports. She died thinking she wasn't worth fighting for, that her family meant nothing to the man who claimed to love her mother. Katherine moved to stand beside her. Amanda, I know this is overwhelming, but you need to understand. Understand what? Amanda stood abruptly, her voice rising to match her rage. That my grandmother was terrorized into exile? That my mother lived in poverty while millions of dollars sat in accounts with her name on them? That my daughter and I have been struggling while our inheritance was managed by people who pretended we didn't exist? Raphael struggled to his feet, his aged frame trembling with emotion. How can we make this right? What can we do to repair the damage? Amanda looked at them, these people who shared her blood but had been strangers her entire life, and felt a cold determination settle over her. You can tell the truth, she said. All of it. To the board, to the media, to anyone who'll listen. You can admit what was stolen from my family and work, to restore every penny. The scandal could destroy the company, Katherine protested. We employ 30,000 people worldwide. Then you should have thought of that before you built your empire on stolen foundations, Amanda replied. You have 72 hours to decide whether you want to control this story or have it destroy you from the outside. She gathered the documents Katherine had shown her, slipping them into her purse. And I want access to everything. Financial records, trust documents, correspondence, every piece of paper that mentions Elena Rodriguez or Rosa Brooks. I want to know exactly how much was stolen from us. Raphael reached for her arm as she headed for the door. Amanda, please, let us help you through this. Let us be the family we should have been all along. She paused, studying his face, seeing her own features reflected in his bone structure, recognizing Emma's artistic hands in his long fingers. Family, she said softly. Family doesn't abandon each other. Family doesn't let each other live in poverty while sitting on fortunes. You want to be my family. Prove it. The elevator doors closed, carrying her back down through the layers of privilege she'd never known belonged to her by right. But Amanda Brooks was no longer the same woman who'd entered Montenegro Plaza. She was no longer just a cocktail server struggling to make ends meet. She was the granddaughter of Raphael Montenegro, rightful heir to a hotel empire built on her family's stolen legacy. And she was going to reclaim what had been taken, no matter the cost. The media storm that followed Katherine Martinez's press conference 3 weeks later was unlike anything Miami's business community had ever witnessed. Hotel Heiress discovers stolen birthright dominated headlines across the globe. Cocktail server to billionaire, the Montenegro family's buried secret exposed, screamed international news broadcasts. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Historical documents proved Elena Rodriguez's status as Raphael's business partner and fiancé. Financial records showed decades of trust funds deliberately kept secret from their rightful beneficiaries. Most damning were Raphael's mother's own letters, detailing the systematic persecution of Elena Rodriguez and the suppression of her legitimate claims to the Montenegro fortune. Montenegro Hospitality Group's stock price collapsed within days of the revelation. Shareholders demanded explanations for the decades-long concealment of major stakeholders. Government regulators in 6 countries announced investigations into corporate governance and inheritance fraud. Luxury travel magazines published editorials questioning the ethics of an empire built on family betrayal. The resolution came not through courtroom battles, but through a private meeting in Raphael Montenegro's study, surrounded by photographs documenting 4 generations of hotel industry leadership built on a foundation of lies and stolen dreams. "I'm dying," Raphael announced without preamble, his voice steady despite the oxygen tank that now accompanied him everywhere. "Heart failure. The doctors say weeks, maybe a month." Amanda sat across from him. No longer the confused server seeking answers, but a woman who'd learned to navigate boardrooms with the same skill she'd once used to balance cocktail trays. Emma played quietly in the corner, drawing pictures of the beach they could now afford to live near. "I'm sorry," Amanda said, and she meant it. Despite everything, this was her grandfather, Emma's great-grandfather, and his approaching death felt like losing family she'd only just found. "Don't be sorry for me," he said with a weak smile. "Be sorry for the time we lost, the years I was too proud and too scared to do what was right." He pushed a document across the mahogany table. "My will revised yesterday. 60% of Montenegro Hospitality Group goes to you, along with all personal assets and the trust funds that should have been Elena's decades ago. Katherine retains 40%. Ensuring operational continuity while acknowledging your family's rightful majority stake." Amanda scanned the document, her business courses helping her understand the magnitude of what was being offered. Not just money, but control. Not just inheritance, but justice for 3 generations of women who'd been denied their birthright. "What about the company?" she asked. 30,000 employees, properties on 6 continents, contracts worth billions. "Will be your responsibility," Katherine said from the doorway, entering with her usual measured grace. "I'll remain as Chief Operating Officer during the transition, but the company belongs to the Rodriguez-Brooks line. It always did." The formal transfer took place 2 months later in the same boardroom where Montenegro Hospitality's directors had met for over 70 years. Amanda sat at the head of the table where Carlos Montenegro had once presided, wearing her grandmother's sapphire ring and a new confidence that came from finally understanding her place in the world. The first item of business was acknowledging the company's true history. A bronze plaque was installed in the lobby of every Montenegro property, reading, "Founded through the partnership of Carlos Montenegro and the Rodriguez family, whose contributions were wrongfully erased but are now restored to honor." The second was establishing the Elena Rodriguez Foundation, dedicated to supporting immigrant families and investigating corporate fraud that targeted vulnerable communities. But the most important change was personal. Amanda moved Emma from their cramped Hialeah apartment to a beachfront home in Coral Gables. where her daughter could attend the best schools while staying connected to their Cuban heritage, through the community Elena had been forced to leave behind. On weekends, they would visit Raphael in his final weeks, Emma drawing pictures while her great-grandfather shared stories about the grandmother she'd never known, Elena Rodriguez, the brilliant woman whose love had created their family and whose strength had preserved it through decades of denial. "She always said the ring would bring us home someday," Raphael told Amanda during one of their last conversations, his voice barely audible above the whisper of his oxygen tank. She knew that truth has a way of surfacing. No matter how deep it's buried, Raphael Montenegro died on a Tuesday morning in October, his final act being a public letter acknowledging the historical injustices committed by his family and formally recognizing Amanda Brooks as the rightful heir to the Rodriguez legacy. His memorial service was attended by world leaders, celebrities, and hotel workers whose lives had been touched by the empire he'd helped build and finally helped heal. Katherine remained as chief operating officer, their relationship evolving from tentative alliance to genuine partnership. The shared experience of uncovering their family's buried secrets had created an unexpected bond between the aunt and niece who'd been strangers until a sapphire ring revealed their connection. 1 year after that transformative Saturday at the Harbor Club, Amanda stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office in the newly renamed Montenegro Rodriguez Tower, watching the sun set over Biscayne Bay. Emma played on the private terrace, her latest drawing depicting the 3 generations of strong women who'd fought to preserve their family's legacy against impossible odds. A single sapphire ring, worn faithfully by a woman who refused to let her family's truth be erased, had finally brought its owners home. Amanda Brooks had walked into the Harbor Club as invisible service staff and emerged as Amanda Montenegro Brooks, guardian of a legacy that had been buried but never truly lost. Sometimes justice arrives like a hurricane, powerful, transformative, and impossible to ignore. Sometimes it comes quietly, carried in the hands of a working mother who refused to let her family's story remain untold. Elena Rodriguez's ring had finally fulfilled its promise, and the empire that tried to erase the Rodriguez name would forever honor it as recognition of what had been stolen and finally restored. This story reminds us that every family has its secrets, every fortune has its hidden foundations, and sometimes it takes someone from outside the circles of power to illuminate the truth that privilege works so hard to conceal. If this tale of perseverance, justice, and the ultimate triumph of love over deception moved you, share it with someone who believes that every legacy deserves to be honored. Like this story and subscribe for more tales that prove no secret, no matter how carefully guarded, can remain buried forever when courage demands its revelation.